Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Vishma Paramatma Rajagacharya, Sisvat A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sagaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopida Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Davad Dham Ki Jai, Gang Jamona Tulasi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasna Bhutade Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Pastakshade Shatadane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 65, Verse 17. Dvalma Sautatra Chavatsin Madhum Madhavam Evacha Rama Kshapasu Bhagavan Gopi Nam Ratim Avahan Dwal 2 maso months tatra there Cha, and Avatsit resided. Madhum, Madhu, Madhava, Eva, indeed, Cha, also Rama, Balaram, Shapasu. And during the nights, Bhagavan, Supreme Lord, Gopinam, to the gopis, Ratim, conjugal pleasure, Avahan, bringing. Translation: Lord Balaram, the personality of Godhead, resided there for the 2 months of Madhu and Madhava, and during the nights he gave his cowherd girlfriends conjugal pleasure. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami states that the gopis who enjoyed conjugal affairs with Sri Balaram during his visit to Gokul had not taken part in Sri Krishna's rasa dance, being too young at that time. Srila Jiva Goswami confirms this statement by quoting from the Bhagavatam, Gopantarena Abhujayo, which indicates that there are particular gopis who act as Lord Balaram's girlfriends. Furthermore, Sri Jiva Goswami states that during the holy festivities celebrated when Krishna killed Shankachuda, the gopis Balaram enjoyed with were different from the ones Lord Krishna enjoyed with. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti agrees with this explanation. In the company of various women, Lord Balaram enjoyed in a garden by the Jamuna river. This garden was bathed in the rays of the full moon and caressed by breezes bearing the fragrance of night-blooming lotuses. Purport: Srila Vishnu Chakravarti explains that Lord Balaram's conjugal pastimes took place in a small forest alongside the Jamuna, a place known as Sri Ram Ghat, which is far from the site of Sri Krishna's rasa dance. Sent by the demigod Varuna, the divine Varuni liquor flowed from the tree hollow and made the entire forest even more fragrant with its sweet aroma. Purport: Srila Sridhar Swami explains that Varuni is a liquor distilled from honey. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti adds that the goddess Varuni, the daughter of Varuna, is the presiding deity of that particular divine liquor. The Acharya also quotes the following statement from Sri Harivamsa: Samipam prashita pitra avarunena tav anaga. Here, the goddess Varuni says to Lord Balaram, "My father Varuna has sent me here to you, O sinless one." The wind carried to Balaram the fragrance of that flood of sweet liquor, and when he smelled it, he went to the tree. There he and his female companions drank. As the Gandharvas sang his glories, Lord Balaram enjoyed within the brilliant circle of young women. He appeared just like Indra's elephant, the lordly Airavata, enjoying in the company of she-elephants. At that time, kettle drums resounded in the sky. The Gandharvas joyfully rained down flowers, and the great sages praised Lord Balaram's heroic deeds. As his deeds were sung, Lord Halayuda wandered as if inebriated among the various forests with his girlfriends. His eyes rolled from the effects of the liquor. Intoxicated with joy, Lord Balaram sported flower garlands, including the famous Vaijayanti. He wore a single earring, and beads of perspiration decorated his smiling lotus face like snowflakes. The Lord then summoned the Jamuna river so that he could play in her waters, but she disregarded his command, thinking he was drunk. This angered Balaram, and he began dragging the river with the tip of his plow. Lord Balaram said, "O sinless one, disrespecting me, you did not come when I call you, but rather move away by your own whim. Therefore, with the tip of my plow I shall bring you here in 100 streams." Sukadeva Goswami continued, "Thus scolded by the Lord, O king, the frightened river goddess Jamuna came and fell at the feet of Sri Balaram, the beloved descendant of Yadu. trembling, she spoke to him the following words. Purport, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, the goddess who appeared before Lord Balaram is an expansion of Srimati Kalandi, one of Lord Krishna's queens in Dwarka. Srila Jiva Goswami calls her a shadow of Kalandi, and Srila Vishnu Chakravarti confirms that she is an expansion of Kalandi, not Kalandi herself. Srila Jiva Goswami also gives evidence from Sri Harivamsa in this statement. Pratyuvacharnava Vadum, the goddess Jamuna, is the wife of the ocean. The Harivamsa therefore also refers to as Sagara Angana. So here we have a description of the pastimes of Lord Balaram and his affairs with the gopis, who were separate from those who had affairs with Krishna. So we see that the Acharyas have pointed out this, particularly that there were separate gopis, because the Supreme Lord enjoys with certain women, and they should not be enjoyed by another person. Of course, we can say that ultimately Lord Balaram is God and Krishna is God, so they're all the same. But nevertheless, we make distinctions, just as Vishnu has Lakshmi as his consort, so we distinguish Lakshmi from Radha and the gopis, even though technically we can say one is an expansion of the other. But in their particular pastimes, they identify themselves as different, and Lakshmi identifies herself as the wife of Vishnu, whereas the gopis, some of the gopis identify themselves as the consorts of Krishna. Other gopis identify themselves as the consorts of Balaram. Now, of course, the only difference here is that between Vishnu and Krishna, obviously, is different lokas. They're not in the same place. But Krishna and Balaram are in the same place in Vrindavan, so there looks like a little bit of a conflict there. But nevertheless, the gopis are separate. So they're not the same gopis who are enjoyed by Krishna and Balaram, but separate individuals. So in this way, it is made clear that the rasa is not in any way disturbed between the Lord and his consorts. So it's described here how Lord Balaram enjoyed with these gopis for 2 months. And then it describes the activity of drinking the Varuni and bringing the Jamuna, or the expansion of Jamuna, Kalandi, to him for pastimes as well. So in other words, Balaram extended his visit for some time to satisfy the people of Vrindavan, and particularly these gopis. And then obviously he returned back to Dwarka again. So this indicates his great attachment for those gopis. Now, of course, the people of Dwarka were very concerned of Krishna goes there, then he won't come back. That's why they didn't want to send him there. We see Balaram goes, he comes back again. He goes back to Dwarka again. But the case of Krishna is such attachment he has for his gopis that they fear he will not come back at all. So in any case, Balaram spent 2 months there. And we see that it describes how, this is actually in the spring season, Madhu and Madhava are the 2 months in the spring season. So it describes how pastimes took place at this time. It also describes how the moon was full. But obviously every day the moon cannot be full under normal circumstances. Nevertheless, things get adjusted in the pastimes. So it's described how, though certain flowers bloom in certain parts of the year, certain seasons, so the jasmines bloom in one season, lotuses bloom in another season, other particular flowers bloom in another season. it's described that when the Lord has pastimes, all the seasons serve the Lord. So in other words, all the good aspects of every season can be there, so all the fragrant flowers of each season will blossom when Krishna has his Ras Leela. And even though lotuses don't bloom at night, they will also bloom. So things are rearranged by the Shaktis of the Lord, and the seasons bear their fruits and whatever necessary for the different pastimes to satisfy the Lord and the gopis. So therefore, no difficulty if the full moon keeps manifesting on different days, even though it should keep changing all the time. Similarly, we see how Krishna was born on the Astami of the waning moon. So the moon is getting smaller and smaller. But then, because of Lord Krishna's birth, the moon became very joyful and became full moon. So we find extraordinary things happening in the pastimes of Krishna. So unlike time and seasons and objects of the material world, in the spiritual world, objects, time, etc. are not limited at all, and they can manifest as they please for the service of the Lord. So whatever intensifies the pastime is manifested. So if a particular flower, a particular season, or time is necessary, it manifests in order to make the pastime perfect for Krishna and the gopis, or Balaram, in this case, Balaram and the gopis. So therefore, just as when Krishna had the Ras Leela, the first one is described, the first night, and then it doesn't go into details about the other nights, but the first night is described, and it's described how all of the ingredients were perfect. So in order to have the Ras Leela, there are certain stimuli which are necessary to invoke love. These are called the udipanas. Certain things, sounds, smells, or sights, which invoke Madhurya Rasa. So one is the moonlight, another is the smell of the jasmine flowers, another is the cool breeze blowing. So these incite the love between Krishna and the gopis. So all of these are detailed in the description of the Ras Leela from chapter 29 onward, the setting. And even though it was autumn season, not necessarily only autumn flowers blossom, but those flowers which were necessary for invoking rasa were manifested at that time. So similarly here we see some of the udipanas or stimuli are mentioned, such as the full moon and the gentle breeze, with the fragrance of night blossoming lotuses. So these are stimuli for the dance of rasa dance of Balaram and the gopis. So not so much detail is given here as with Krishna's Ras Leela, but we can infer the situation was similar, because Balaram also is Supreme Lord, full of bliss, and therefore he imparts bliss to his devotees, the gopis in Madhurya Rasa. So this rasa dance is considered to be one of the highest pastimes, and it's also described as being unique to Krishna. So in the Nectar Devotion it's described how Vishnu and Krishna are actually one, according to Siddhanta, and according to Tattva, they're all one Supreme Lord. But nevertheless, they are different according to the qualities manifested. So Krishna manifests superior qualities. So in reference to that, the commentary says, for instance, Krishna manifests a Ras Leela, and Vishnu does not manifest a Ras Leela. So that Ras Leela is one particular pastime of Krishna which manifests excellent qualities that don't manifest in other forms of the Lord. So that makes Krishna special. He is considered Bhagavan Swayam, or a special form of the Lord. So the rasa dance, as of course also pointed out in Chaitanya Charitamrita, how Lakshmi was so attracted. She also wanted to join the Rasa Leela because it was so attractive, more than her pastimes with Vishnu. So it's a very unique pastime within which we find the highest expertise in singing and dancing and joking and whatever. And so everything was in a perfect situation to express the bliss of Madhurya Rasa. However, here we see Balaram also had Rasa Leela, so also very special. So therefore we put Krishna at the top, then we put Balaram next in a special category also, because he has a similar appearance to Krishna, apart from his complexion, which is white, but very similar. And then he manifests similar pastimes to Krishna. So all the pastimes of Sakya are manifested with Balaram as well. And the pastimes of Vatsalya are there, Krishna with Mother Yasoda, Nanda Maharaj, and Rohini, and Balaram also, same pastimes. So here also Madhurya Rasa, very similar pastimes and sweetness. So very, very similar. Of course, ultimately, Krishna is put in the supreme position, and Balaram is put in a secondary position. So therefore, we don't find so many pastimes of Balaram elaborately described here. The center stage is given to Krishna and his pastimes. So here also we have a description of the Rasa Leela of Balaram, but less attention, less details are given here in comparison to that of Krishna. So he's very high and has special pastimes, but still Krishna's pastimes are in a special category, ultimate category of being most brilliant. But here we have a description to show that Balaram also has a very great similarity to Krishna in many ways, and therefore, just as Krishna displays a spectacular Rasa Leela, so Balaram also does. And response of is described. The Devatas, the Gandharvas, etc., became very enthusiastic and began showering praises on Balaram because of his skill in the Rasa Leela, just as they did with Krishna. So therefore, Balaram also in a very, very high position. Then it's also described here two other things. One is the Varuni incident, where Varuni manifests herself for the pleasure of Balaram, and then Balaram gets intoxicated. So even though material intoxication is degrading, we find in the spiritual world they also get intoxicated. And not only Balaram in the pastimes of Krishna, also they get intoxicated. So Krishna and the gopis are drinking this liquor made from honey as well, and they get intoxicated and they're not able to speak properly, etc. And they stagger around for a short period of time. So this type of intoxication looks similar to the intoxication of the material world, and its effects on the people, so that they cannot speak and move properly. However, also different. So this is part of we can say, the pastimes of the Lord in the spiritual world, to display another aspect of bliss. Right? So the material intoxication leads to illusion, sleep, degradation, etc. Spiritual intoxication also leads to illusion. They can't see properly, they may sleep, etc. So it looks quite similar in many ways, but it does not lead to degradation. So the intoxication of the material world is related to tamagun, the material world. The intoxication of the spiritual world, on the other hand, is quite different. It supports the bliss, the spiritual bliss, the ananda between Krishna and his devotees. So instead of being tamasic, it is fully spiritual and just manifests another aspect of bliss. So, in this way, we see that we have counterparts of things between the material world and the spiritual world, but they are very opposite. Just as the whole concept of Madhurya Rasa is different in the spiritual world and in the material world. So in the material world, it generally leads to attachment and degradation and Maya. Main cause of Maya in the material world is the attraction between men and women. So therefore, it's degrading. It leads into Tamagun also. But in spiritual world, no, it doesn't. It's the highest bliss again. So things become opposite in this spiritual world. The qualities become quite different. So here we find the intoxication taking place. Balaram drinks the Varuni and becomes intoxicated. This is, of course, one famous quality of Balaram. He's often described as having red eyes which roll around because of his intoxication. So it's a feature of Balaram more than of Krishna. Though sometimes it happens to Krishna, it's more of a typical feature of Balaram, his intoxicated appearance and his activities related to that. On the other hand, we cannot criticize him because it is not material. It is actually pastime with the in the spiritual world with the gopis, and it leads to bliss there rather than tamagun and degradation. So therefore this pastime is mentioned here to show that the spiritual world is quite different from the material world. What is condemned in the material world may be praiseworthy in the spiritual world. And then it's described here how he made the Jamuna River come close so he could have water sports in the river. And to do that, she didn't want to come, so then he got angry and he threatened her with his plow, started pulling the river with his plow. So Balaram is famous for the plow, the hala. So he's called Hala Yuddha. He carries the weapon of the plow, which is symbolic, of course, agriculture. But he here uses it to pull the Jamuna River, who actually is in the form of Kalandi, who's an expansion of the Kalandi in Dwarka, who is the consort of Krishna. Due to his intoxication, he becomes angry, and then he performs this pastime with the Jamuna River in another form. So, in this way, Balaram spent his time in Vrindavan, particularly with the gopis, and performed remarkable pastimes in their company. But like Krishna, he also had duties to perform in relation to the Yadus and killing demons, etc., and protecting Dwarka. So he also had to return. So this ultimately leaves the gopis and the others again in a very uncomfortable position because they're in separation again. But later on we have Krishna fulfilling his promise and coming back. So this gives the highest satisfaction. So when Krishna does that, he doesn't leave. He leaves in another form, but he stays there. So in this way, there's a resolution to the separation of Krishna from the people of Vrindavan. Other places it's described that not only did Krishna come back, but Balaram came back, and even Uddhava was allowed to come back because he shared the sentiments of the people of Vrindavan. So he was allowed to, even though he is from Dwarka, he was allowed to enter into the pastimes and observe and behold and experience the rasa of Vrindavan as well, because he was very close to Krishna. So here we find a temporary relief for the people of Vrindavan by the return of Balaram.
Question from the internet. He says that in this world, in many cultures, a man is not allowed to dance with other women, etc., except his wife, and it is punishable. But we find that God is acting differently. He also says in Gita, Yate Acharati, whatever a great person does, others follow. Question is, why the Lord has to perform such pastimes explained here? Many will take advantage and common people will get confused by such pastimes.
Well, yes, the leader usually sets an example for others to follow. This is the normal dharma, or the normal code of conduct in this material world. And where there's many other codes of conduct: don't steal, don't lie, don't do many things. And the Supreme Lord usually follows that. Now, of course, we find Krishna as an exception, and therefore more difficult to understand. And many people cannot appreciate Krishna as Supreme Lord. So, with Krishna, we see he does steal, he does lie, and then he has these affairs with the gopis. Quite different from the normal process of dharma. But we also understand that dharma is related to the material world for material people because they can't control their senses. Supreme Lord is different. He doesn't have to control his senses. He simply expresses bliss by all of his activities with his body and his senses, etc. Okay? So all these activities in which Krishna may lie or steal or whatever are simply expressions of bliss in the spiritual world. Okay? So different for people in the material world who are very strict in dharma to appreciate, definitely. And that is why Krishna is difficult to appreciate, and many people cannot appreciate because of this. Nevertheless, there is an advantage in all of this, and that is that in these activities, Krishna is not setting an example. He's not playing the role of the Supreme Lord, setting an example for other people at all. And when he does that, when he's not aware of himself as the Supreme Lord, then it allows for more intimate pastimes between Krishna and the devotees, and consequently more bliss. So all of this is manifested in order to give more bliss to the devotees. And of course, he also manifests the other aspect, when he is Vishnu or other forms, and then he generally follows all the aspects of Dharma. Or even in Dwarka, he follows Dharma quite strictly. But then the bliss is also restricted to some degree. So this is the choice that a devotee will also have to make. He can worship a form of the Lord who's very strict, etc., and get a certain type of bliss. Or he can worship Krishna and experience a higher bliss. So it depends on the taste of the individual who he wants to worship, Krishna or some other form.